You want Philly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Welcome to Huddle Up with Mitchs Bueno, the podcast where prominent figures in sports talk about how sport has impacted the journey of their lives.
Philly special. Ready?
Welcome everybody to Huddle Up with Mitchs Bueno, episode 8. Today's guest was most recently the voice of the Winnipeg Ice for their inaugural season in the Western Hockey League here in Manitoba, Mitch Peacock. Mitch, welcome to Huddle Up and thanks for being on.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Mitch, you've had a plethora of experience with sports in your life and have been all over in terms of being a sportscaster and doing play-by-play. Let's wind the clock back a little bit and talk about your origins. You're a University of Alberta Recreation Studies grad, and then you went into broadcasting and play-by-play and sport media stuff a several number of years later. Take us to what the transition was that led you from doing the arts degree at University of Alberta to getting into what your work is now.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting roundabout way of getting into this line of work, Matthias. I had, as you said, gone to U of A for my undergrad. I was then presented with an opportunity to go to Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario to take some graduate courses and play varsity hockey for the Golden Gaels, which was a privilege and a lot of fun. But then I needed to get on with my life, and so I needed to find a job. I went back to Edmonton to do that. And I was able to use my degree to get a job in career development and employment counseling, helping young people who dropped out of school and helping new Canadians with job searching, with career placement opportunities, work experience type things, resume writing, preparation for interviews, that type of thing. And my emphasis in that role was really encouraging people to identify their passions. What is it that you love? What gets you going when you get up in the morning? What do you think about in your free time? What would you do if you had free time to do whatever you wanted to do? For instance, if you like cars, maybe you could be a mechanic or get into auto sales, or if you like working around the house, perhaps you could pursue a trade, like plumbing or carpentry. Whatever it is, if you've got that energy, you'll get after it. You'll do the training, you'll put the time in to work your way up the ladder, and you'll enjoy the process. And so then after spinning those yarns of wisdom for 3 or 4 or 5 years, I would notice that on my coffee breaks, I was reading the hockey news or Sports Illustrated, or at lunch, I'd go flip the TV on in the lunchroom and watch to see what was going on with Sportsnet or TSN. And I started to kind of think a little bit, what exactly am I doing to follow my own advice? My girlfriend at the time, is now my wife of almost 25 years, at that same time made a big decision to change from being a legal secretary at a busy firm in Edmonton to going to Calgary to Mount Royal to study massage therapy. And I thought, boy, it takes a lot of courage just to get out of something that's established and it's comfortable and to do something completely different. But if it drives you, if it motivates you, that's probably a way to go. And the light bulb really came on brightly for me that I was probably not paying attention to my main interest in pursuing my main passion. So I made the decision to apply to SAIT in Calgary to study broadcast news, and was accepted. And 27 years old, went to school to take broadcasting when many of my colleagues were 19, 20 years old. And actually played soccer for SAIT as well when many of my teammates were 18 or 19 years old, which was quite an experience. But I went from there. My first opportunity out of SAIT actually came after my first year at SAIT. I was given the chance to be the voice of the expansion Bow Valley Eagles of the Alberta Junior Hockey League, who were playing at that time at a Canmore at Banff. And so that was my kind of toe in the door on the business, and I kind of built from there, calling those Junior A games that first year.
So you finally launched yourself and into the industry by listening to your own advice, albeit maybe a bit later than most, but it seems that it seems to have worked out in a strange kind of way. And then you weaved your path after doing junior hockey play-by-play. Was it hockey that you found that was the sport you wanted to work in the most, or was there a sport that you were more particularly keen on from your experience playing when you were younger?
To be honest with you, I really enjoyed being a player, and I thought that it would be great if somehow I could make a living continuing to travel around with the team and to live that experience of a season, from training camp to kind of getting a year underway and a team getting to know itself and growing into its game, and then building down, the stretch to perhaps a playoff opportunity. And if the playoffs came along, the excitement of taking a run at a championship. I just felt that that was a neat journey. And I would like to continue that journey, just in a different role. So that's kind of what was the driving force of it, was that. So hockey would be the answer to the question. But that said, I really like soccer, and anybody who knows me knows that, and knows that it's right there with hockey for me. So that was a big factor as well. And I played a lot of sports growing up. When I grew up, it was unusual for someone to specialize at a really young age. We all seemed to play whatever the school offered: volleyball, basketball, baseball, track, soccer, hockey, especially growing up in a small town like Castlegar, BC in those days. And so I had an interest in all sports anyway, but hockey and soccer would have led the way and kind of been the real spark to get me on this track.
So then so you spend your time with working in the junior hockey league in Alberta and going around to many different teams, and then got your opportunity to be on television working as an anchor with Fox Soccer Report in the early 2000s. What was the opportunity? How did the opportunity to work on that show manifest itself? And what was your thinking when you got the opportunity to go there in relation to your love for soccer, similar to hockey?
Yeah, that's funny how that goes. Things sort of point you in directions at times in your life, it seems to me. And so you're quite right in saying that that was a real start in terms of being an anchor and getting into television. I had done play-by-play in hockey for several years. I'd done Alberta Junior Hockey League, East Coast Hockey League, BC Hockey League, Prince Albert Raiders in the Western Hockey League. And then I went on to Calgary and hosted Flames Radio for 3 years, which was a great experience. And of course, reaching the NHL level for anybody in that sport is a real thrill. So I was able to do that for a few years. And then I got an opportunity in March, I think it was, of 2003. Roger Millions was the sports reporter for Sportsnet in Calgary, and a play-by-play announcer for Sportsnet as well on Western Hockey League broadcasts and NHL broadcasts. Roger was a great veteran pro and a guy that I got to know working there. And I saw Roger one day at the Saddle Dome on the morning of a game, and the poor guy could barely make a voice. He was so hoarse. And so I said to him, you going to be okay? And he's like, I've done this before. I'll just have some tea, but I've got a game tonight. And so I said to him, good luck. I hope everything goes okay, and take care. And so anyway, I went to the radio station, and I did my afternoon show on Fan 960 in Calgary, and came out of the booth, and the message light was on my phone, and it was about 5 minutes after 6. The Hitmen were playing that night at 7 at the Saddle Dome. Roger was supposed to call the game. When I saw the light, I thought of Roger right away, because I knew how much difficulty he was having that morning. And so I went and I checked my phone messages. Sure enough, it was Roger in this really painful sounding voice saying, "Call me." And so I called. I couldn't get through to him. I called my wife and said, "I'm going to swing by the Saddle Dome on the way home. If everything's okay with Roger, I should see you in 45 minutes. If I don't see you in 45 minutes, maybe you should turn on Sportsnet." So, it's a goofy thing to say, but that's what I felt. I felt something was happening. So I drove down to the Saddle Dome. I got caught up in traffic a little bit and made my way into the media parking lot behind the arena in Calgary at about 10 to 7. And there was Roger standing outside the TV truck waving at me. And so I drove up and got out of the car, and he says, "You're calling the game." And he took me in the truck, and he introduced me to Rob Corte, who was producing the game for Sportsnet, who now is an executive with Sportsnet, and had a tremendous career. And so off I went, running with Roger to the elevator, get up to the broadcast booth in the Saddle Dome, Ryan Walter was scheduled to do color on the game. Poor Ryan was sitting there by himself. The players were coming out on the ice, getting ready for the game. And I think Ryan thought he was going to have to call the game. And so anyway, I sat down, and Roger had prepared lineups for each of the two teams, the Red Deer Rebels and the Calgary Hitmen. The Red Deer Rebels with Dion Phaneuf and Cam Ward, and the Calgary Hitmen with Ryan Getzlaff. And it was a few years ago. Anyway, they put the headset on. Rob Corte talked to me in my ear. They dropped the puck. Away I went. I called this game for Sportsnet. And I realized after that game, boy, I'd really like to try television, especially calling games. So I knew I had to get into TV somehow. At the end of that season with the Flames, there was an opportunity to do sports for Global in Edmonton. And you probably remember in those days, the Global stations in the big markets had a half-hour sports show each night, very much like a Sports Center or a Sportsnet news desk type thing. So that's what you did. If you wanted to make it, you tried to get onto one of those great late-night Global shows and cut your teeth. And then maybe you could work your way up to a national opportunity. So I applied to this job in Edmonton, and Tim Spellacy was running things there, and a real gentleman and a guy who'd been in the business for many years. And after a short time, I hadn't heard anything about my application. I phoned Tim. I said, Tim, what's happening? Any opportunity there for me? And he said, we've narrowed it down to a couple of guys, but the other guys are global guys. They've been in our chain for a while. They've worked their way up. They deserve an opportunity. You've got some ability, but I don't think it's fair to the people we have. So I said, well, if you're hiring somebody from Global, what Global are they leaving? And he said, we're going to hire the guy from Regina. And I said, okay, great. Can I call Regina? And he said, well, we gotta finalize everything first. You can't just go jumping in there. So anyway, short story long, I was sort of fairly soon after hired to do sports at Global in Regina, and went over there. And Warren Woods was a guy who'd been around for many years, and I think he probably wondered what he got stuck with when I showed up, because I had never done a second really of any kind of anchoring on television. But he was good enough to teach me a lot of the basics, and I had an opportunity there to do that show. Basically for one Rough Riders season is how I calculated it. And was able to work with people like Danny Barrett and Neilon Green and some really good people. And then because Global owned Fox Sports World Canada, and of course, as a result, oversaw the Fox Sports World Report, they had an opening. They were expanding from 5 nights a week to 7. And so I was really interested to do more anchoring, and particularly if I had a chance to work with soccer. So Joe Pascucci, the legend here in Winnipeg, brought me in for an interview. He's kind of showed me the ropes a little bit, and I guess I fooled him, because he hired me, and I got my opportunity with Global for 5 years with the Fox Soccer Report, as it turned out, and it was just a great time.
And Fox Soccer Report was, in its day, it rivaled many other shows with how popular it was, and being the 7 nights a week. Not so much as we have anymore, unfortunately, but what was your favorite part about doing the Fox Soccer Report? Were there any specific interviews or games or coverage that you really enjoyed or stuck out to you after your time working there?
Well, I suppose it's cliche to say, but I think it was the people. We had a really good group of people to work together there. So it was a lot of fun to be a part of that group. I did a lot of shows with Carlos Machado. And Carlos and I always got along really well. But Michelle Lissel and Jeremy St. Louis, and of course Derek Taylor, who went on to great things with TSN. Plus behind the scenes, we had outstanding people behind the scenes. Some of the people I still keep in touch with. So that was great. And then, it was really a lot of fun, Matthias, just to kind of, show up on those run-of-the-mill Saturday mornings during the football season and walk into an edit suite with a stack of tapes of all the Premier League games that day, and some of the games from Germany, and we would throw these tapes in machines, and we would cut highlight packages for our own segments of the show. and you know, as a lover of the game, and it was just fun to look at the goals and look at the plays and piece it all together. And then, you know, I suppose all of us have this sort of thing in us where we're that kid who's got a story we want to tell everybody. And, you know, so by the end of messing around with all these tapes, you're thinking, I got to show people this goal from that Southampton game today, you know, or Steven Gerrard, that was amazing. You know, we got to get this out there. So, you know, that was just fun to do that on a consistent basis.
You talk about having a stack of tapes. Now it'd be a little bit different. Did
Yeah.
you find that when you look back to that experience, that it was actually really fun being able to go through the manual process of using the VHS, or did you find that, you know, nowadays it's a lot cooler and it's a lot more fun? Or what is the, I guess, the advantage of the technology for its time, with you guys delving into watching the highlights of the EPL, Bundesliga, Serie A, and all the major four leagues in Europe?
Yeah, you know, I'm not sure if there was any real advantage. It was just how it was. But, you know, you kind of, maybe like other tradespeople, you know, people who work in carpentry or in some line of work like that, you just appreciate the tools and you appreciate the process. And it's just kind of how it is until you know something different or something better. I do think of the times when the tape got stuck in the machine and we couldn't show the highlights of the game because the tape got broken or something along those lines. As you know, thank goodness technology has evolved. But no, it was just the way that it was, and we enjoyed it, and you know, by and large, we enjoyed it. There were days when it was getting tight to showtime and you're messing around with tape, but it was just part of the experience. And like I say, you sort of got into a zone of just getting excited about handling the material and getting it together.
So you were with Fox Soccer Report between 2003 and 2008, and was it that the show had stopped being broadcasted before you moved on to, or for you to move on to the next opportunity, or what was the transition period between then and when you started doing work with CBC Winnipeg and doing work with CBC Sports with coverage of the Olympics, as well as coverage with the 2010 FIFA World Cup when CBC had its broadcast?
Yeah, you know what happened there was the show was still going strong actually when I left. So what happened there was Toronto Maple Leaf Sports got Toronto FC and established a Canadian presence in Major League Soccer. And so I was really excited about the possibility of being involved in a Major League Soccer broadcast. I grew up in BC watching the Whitecaps in the old North American Soccer League. So I reached out to Kelly Rudy, who I'd gotten to know when I was working in Calgary. And he's just a real gentleman and a quality guy through and through. And I knew he had good connections with CBC from being involved in Hockey Night in Canada. And I said to Kelly, I said, is there anybody that you think I should talk to at CBC to see if there's a way I could be involved in the Major League Soccer broadcast? He said, well, let me see what I can do. So a short time later, he called me back and he said, you need to talk to somebody by the name of Chris Irwin. And I said, okay. He says, he's expecting your call. Here's his number. So, I mean, you can't ask for more than that. I can't say enough good things about Kelly Rudy. So I called Chris Irwin, and we were able to arrange a meeting a while later. And I then got a chance to audition for CBC as a play-by-play announcer for soccer. I called an international friendly between Canada and Scotland, a U20 game that was played out in Vancouver. And I did not get the job. In fact, Nigel Reid was selected for the job, and everybody knows Nigel now. He's gone on to be a real voice of soccer here in Canada. But I guess I did enough in the audition that they felt I could help in some way. So I was given an opportunity to work Major League Soccer on CBC as a sideline reporter, as a studio host, as a fill-in play-by-play guy. It was a really great opportunity, but not a full-time job. So the people at Fox were good enough to let me go whenever I needed to go and do Major League Soccer. I would just basically use my holidays to do it. And so that was my end to CBC, was in 2007 when Major League Soccer came to Canada through Toronto FC. I was able to jump in on those broadcasts and begin time with CBC. And then Mike Beauregard, who'd been the sports voice here in Winnipeg with CBC for a number of years, decided to move on. And so I thought it would be great if I could work for CBC full time. That would give me an opportunity to maybe do more than the soccer. And was really fortunate to get that job. They're not easy to come by. And that allowed me then, working with CBC, to do other things, like the World Cup hosting in 2010. Hockey Night in Canada began for me in 2010 as well. Cassie Campbell-Pascal, her husband Brad, were expecting. Cassie had been doing the Montreal games, so she needed to step aside for a little bit, and they asked me to do it. So I did I don't know how many Montreal games that 2010-11 season. I did a playoff series between Detroit and Arizona. And then, that kind of served as a bit of a springboard to when the Jets arrived here. And I was able to do ringside reporting on Jets broadcasts on Hockey Night in Canada until CBC lost the rights to Rogers. But, then being with CBC led to all kinds of other things, track and field and alpine skiing and Olympics and Pan Am Games. And so, I owe a great deal to CBC.
You talk about the opportunity to be able to talk about and broadcast soccer, especially its first presence in Canada in a major North American pro sports league. Talk about what it means and now in comparison to what it meant back then when Toronto FC first became a franchise in the MLS, and how you've seen the game of soccer grow in Canada, especially considering the example that followed with Toronto FC starting to become a powerhouse in MLS. What does it mean for Canadians now to watch them and to watch now having a CPL, et cetera, and the evolution of soccer in Canada?
Yeah, it's such an amazing game. It's the world's game. Let's be honest, it's the most popular sport around the globe. Canada is a highly developed nation that to that point, at least not in recent years prior to 2007. Of course, the NASL had a presence a number of years prior. There was the Canadian Soccer League as well. There have been incarnations of other things. But it just seemed that, for people who love the game like us, it had to be. It had an inevitability about it, it seemed, because we're this highly developed first world nation with a wonderful multicultural population, many people who've grown up around the game and want to be connected to the game, and we didn't have anything to call our own, to latch onto. And the people at Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment were spot on in knowing that there was a pent-up demand. And when that team came in, people just jumped for it. I mean, they had a full stadium and they had a waiting list and they had really good numbers on television. And it was the beginning of the process that we're starting to see unfolding more and more now. Montreal Impact, who had a very impressive organization at other levels, came up to Major League Soccer. Eventually, the Whitecaps were where they belong in Major League Soccer, the highest level here in North America. In the U.S. First Division, as I guess it's technically known. And then, last year, we get the Canadian Premier League, the Canadian First Division. And that's wonderful too. And it will only grow and will only get better and stronger and will only succeed in its, media platforms that it has as well in its partnership with Media Pro and One Soccer. So I think it's wonderful. I think the next step has to be professional opportunities for women to play in this country. We've got far too many dedicated female athletes who don't have a place to play on a regular basis. We've got amazing role models like Desiree Scott, who are doing what they can to show young women that it's possible. But I don't think that, everybody's necessarily ready right away for NWSL or to go to Europe. So much like the men need a pathway, I think there needs to be a female pathway, and I hope that comes very soon. But we're seeing great growth and we're seeing positive things. And I don't think there's any reason to believe it should slow down, because we've got the population, we've got the businesses, we've got the financial wherewithal. And I think it's a market that still hasn't, reached its potential when it comes to soccer. So it's exciting.
In terms of the opportunity for women, you look at the the great success of the Canadian women's national team in soccer and having produced many tremendous athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you're right, tough for everybody to be ready to go to Europe or to play in WSL. Do you think that an opportunity for women to be able to pave more of a strong foundation towards the national team would come in the form of a women's CPL partnership, or what do you think the opportunity would be for women to allow them to build that stronger foundation to bolster the already great success that the national team has experienced?
Yeah, really good question. And I don't claim to be an expert on player development. I'm just a guy who talks about about sports. But for me, I mean, my instinct is that I think a Canadian Premier League for women would be of great value, because it would be by Canadians for Canadians, as the men's league is. We've seen that the NWSL provides opportunities for players. And that Canada Soccer has done a great job of giving national team players financial support to play and participate in those leagues. But those are only so many opportunities for so many players. Those players have already made it to the national team when they're getting support to play in the NWSL. I think the more players that we've got playing in high-level matches on a regular basis provides a greater depth, a greater pool of players for our national team, and could subsequently create more professional caliber players to play in the NWSL or abroad. So for me, the more players getting a chance to play at a higher level against good competition, the better it is for those players and for our programs.
And it's a kind of strange dichotomy between the women's and men's teams, since many female players in Canada have to travel abroad for their opportunities to develop, whereas there are closer opportunities for men to be able to play professional soccer, at least within the scope of Canada. But the Canadian men's team has significantly struggled in comparison to the women's. But now with an opportunity to be to be a tri-host of a World Cup in 2026, do you think that will be the final moment that will launch soccer into the stratosphere in Canada, or when do you think the opportunity will be for the national team here in our country to finally be in a more reputable level and consistent level in terms of their opportunity to qualify for World Cups?
Well, that's tricky. I think that it's always a process. It goes in cycles sometimes. And I think that right now Canada's fortunate to have, players like Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, people that are international caliber players, that are getting the attention of young people, that are inspiring businesses to get involved and show their support, that are helping the national team to get good results, like the recent win over the United States. So I think that when you've got those personalities and that personnel, you're going to get attention, you're going to get backing, you're going to draw people. And then the key is to how do you keep them? How do you grow this thing? So things like being in a World Cup can certainly create a memory for generations. For me, I remember the 86 guys, in the previous time that Canada was in a men's World Cup. So those things are all important, but I think it's built on a solid foundation. You've got to have the right programs in place. You've got to have community support. It's not just moments, it's having real structure, and ways to nurture young talents and to get people opportunities. So I'm not sure there's a short answer to your question other than to say those things are good and valuable, but you need to constantly care about the process to be able to really do something long-term and make it part of your society's kind of mindset.
And I think when you look at the example to transition a little bit towards the Olympic Games, and especially with the work and the coverage that you've done there, you look at the importance and the deep-rooted history of participating in the Olympics for Canadians, even just outside of soccer and many other sports. Talk a little bit about what your perspective has been on how the Olympics has played an important role in terms of sport development in our country, and where you see things headed through the next set of games, obviously, despite the unfortunate postponing of Tokyo 2020. But what is it about the Olympics that really allows Canadians to thrive in sport?
Well, I think that, for many people who are in the so-called Olympic sports, that's the ultimate arena. That's the ultimate stage. It's the ultimate inspiration. They grind it out in off-season training. They grind it out in World Cup events to prepare. Many of them have wonderful careers. I'm talking about Olympic athletes, wonderful careers that we don't even know about because we don't see them until they come to the Olympics. The Olympics lifts their careers to another level, rightly or wrongly, and I would say in many respects wrongly, because we forget about all of the work that they do, all of the times that aren't Olympic times, and that needs to get more recognition. I would like to see those athletes, and CBC works to try and do what it can to show those athletes working, in their regular seasons, so to speak. But the Olympics is something special, and I think most sports fans and most athletes and most administrators and coaches hold it very dear because they know that it's when the world gets together. So I think there's a great value in the Olympics, and they're special. I think that they're special because of the sporting stage. They're special because of the way that they connect humanity, people from everywhere. You see it year after year in Olympics where it's not only about results and it's not only about achievements, but people who've fallen and get support from a fellow athlete or a fellow coach. It has a way to make us all realize how similar and together we are. That's very unique and certainly special in the sports realm. So I think that I'm not sure if I'm answering your original question or not, but I do think that the Olympics hold a special place and do something to inspire athletes, not only in Canada, but everywhere.
For sure, and especially with how much it creates unity amongst other athletes and athletes from different countries and coaches and administrators, et cetera. It really is a powerful event, and there's a lot of great impact with it. And in terms of your first experience with working with the Olympics, how did that opportunity come to life, and what was your reaction and thinking with when you were told that you were first going to get an opportunity to work a part of the coverage team with the Olympics?
Well, to be honest, I don't remember specifically. I had, as we talked about earlier, been hired by CBC to be the sports reporter anchor here in Winnipeg. So I had an opportunity to do a number of things with CBC Sports on a national level, like the Major League Soccer stuff, the Hockey Night in Canada stuff, the FIFA World Cup in 2010. So I guess my hope was that I had started to put together enough of a resume and shown enough ability to get a chance to do Olympics. And so I was presented with that opportunity in the lead up to 2014 to go to Sochi. And, I suppose it's one of those things where you have a short period of time to feel really excited about it. And then you have a period of time to get your act together so you don't mess it up. so and maybe that's just my personality, but it was kind of like, you're anticipating and hopeful that you're going to get the chance. Then you find out you get the chance, and then 5 minutes later you're going, oh my gosh, I better start doing some homework. So that's kind of a bit how it was for me, and it was combined with the sort of mystique of being able to go to Russia. Which is a unique experience unto itself, and so I was just very grateful and wanted to do a good job and make sure Canadians could get the best they could out of whatever I was responsible for, which ended up being freestyle skiing that time.
And freestyle skiing, you talk about the mindset to do your homework and make sure that you're not too stargazed for too long, considering it's such a great opportunity and has such a big impact. What was your thinking when you had been told that freestyle skiing was going to be what your coverage responsibility was at the Olympics in 2014 in Sochi?
Yeah, you know what? I guess I developed a bit of a reputation with CBC as a bit of a homework guy. So there was a confidence in them to me that I would figure it out. And what I learned very quickly is they do a superb job of lining up color commentators. They really look at people who have competed in these sports, who've been on these stages, who are not only people who are well-spoken and thoughtful, but also people who have walked in those shoes and lived that life. So for me to have a chance to meet with people like Jen Heil, Ashley McIver, Jeff Bean, months and months before, and be able to go over tape, to look at videos on YouTube together on Skype, and to have conversations, to go to some World Cup events together, to get to meet the athletes and the coaches, and to just build a base of knowledge and a comfort with the sport and with each other, was really massive. I mean, that's the key for me. That's how I've been able to become this sort of jack of all trades for CBC when it comes to Olympics. I've done, the freestyle skiing events in Sochi, for Rio, rugby sevens, men's field hockey, high jump, golf, some soccer, and then in 2018 in Pyeongchang, short track speed skating. And my method has been pretty consistent throughout. Lean on those fantastic color commentators to learn the sport inside out, know what you know what you don't know, and stay in your lane, so that those guys can shine and people can enjoy the event.
For sure. And I can imagine, especially when working with such talented and knowledgeable color commentators, you want to make sure to keep the broadcast in flow so that you're staying where you need to stay, and that they can take the lead and you can follow them along and be able to really be a 1-2 punch to create an amazing broadcast experience for viewers at home. And especially considering being in a diverse array of sports, such as freestyle skiing or short track or whatever it may be. And I think that from what you talked about, it sounds like the opportunity to be in any sport was excellent at the Olympics, regardless of what it was. And that knowledge and research and teamwork is what really allowed for it to be a smooth transition and a great experience for viewers at home.
Well, I hope it was a great experience for viewers at home. That's the goal, right? That's what it's all about. But you're right. That's the process. That's sort of what it, that's how I look at it. Very simply, the play-by-play guy is telling people what happened, and the color person is telling them why it happened. So, you have to be very careful as the play-by-play person not to get too far into thinking you really understand in the depth that those color people understand what's happening. You got to set them up to be able to share that knowledge and expertise that they truly have, because they've been in those events, they've been in those moments. And then, one thing that's really, really emphasized with CBC as well, and I think is a hallmark of their coverage and a really positive element of their coverage, is that we are consistently reminded that we are there to provide a neutral representation of the events before us. There's no we. We're not there for Canada. Like, we're not saying go Canada go. We're not saying hooray Canada won. Whatever's happening internally as you watch a Canadian win a medal, you've got to look at it like it's the Olympics and athletes from around the world are taking part. This is a spectacular stage. These are memorable events, and we want people to take them in and enjoy them. And it's great for them to jump up and down in their living rooms and spill the popcorn and hug each other and chuck the pillows and all that kind of stuff. But for us, we just have to call it right down the middle, because CBC takes great pride in that journalistic element of describing the event. So that's something that sometimes takes some people a little bit of getting used to, or maybe even sometimes when people watch, they say, well, how come you're not hollering and jumping up and down yourself, when Sam Girard crosses the finish line in first place? And, that's what's behind it, is that CBC takes a great deal of pride in being able to say, here are the games, and enjoy them as you wish. And it's not a home team broadcast.
Oh, for sure. And I think that kind of leads into my next question there is that human element to understanding when you are watching a Canadian win a medal, especially gold medal. It can be very internally exciting if you're a very passionate and avid fan of sports, but on the outside, it's a very neutral thing. And it's not similar to how in soccer, where the broadcast of each country they'll let you know who they're cheering for. And you're going to know, when Brazil scores, that they're going to scream and go crazy, or when the other team scores, like, oh, okay, a goal, whatever, it's fine. Like, but in terms of yourself, what, and now, you're out of an Olympic context in terms of this, but what has been one of your favorite calls that you've made in terms of broadcasting with the Olympics and CBC, whether it be from how smooth it was, or whether it was the honor that you took in being able to call an amazing moment for whether it be a Canadian athlete or for a tremendous feat of an athlete of another country? What has been one that sticks out in your mind?
Wow. You could have told me that one beforehand, Matthias. I might giving you a better answer. It's very tough to say anything specifically. I think it's just such a privilege, to be in those situations. That I guess I've called six gold medals for Canadians. Alex Bilodeau defending his gold medal in moguls, the one that he had won on Canadian soil, becoming the first Canadian to win an Olympic gold medal on Canadian soil, and then in Sochi when I was there defending that with his brother, who he's so close to, right there on scene to celebrate afterwards. Certainly memorable. You see these athletes having perhaps the finest moment of their career right in front of you. And anybody who's worked for a goal of any kind knows the time and effort that goes into it. And you just feel good for these people that all of those sacrifices and all of those efforts have led to something that will go down in history with their name beside it, and for them and for their families. So you want to honor that. And to be honest, that's the big thing for me. So it's hard to pick a particular moment. I'd like to value all of those moments. I had a unique experience in Sochi where Canadians finished first and second in the women's ski cross final. Marielle Thompson won. Kelsey Surwa finished in second. And on the last day, or one of the last days in Russia, Jeff Bean and I, who did a number of the events together, went to Canada House. And we walked in just as the ski cross athletes were being celebrated in Canada House. And they had a little ceremony for them. And the ceremony started with everybody sitting down quietly. And on a giant screen at the front of Canada House, they replayed the final and showed them coming to the finish line first and second, gold and silver. And Jeff and I sat at the back of the room having called it, and just, basically no one even knew we were there. And it was incredible to watch those women with their families and coaches and friends see the moment themselves and watch them, the joy, the tears, the hugging and everything like that. And just to feel like in some way you had anything at all to do with it, to make it better for them, that's something that stays with you for a long time. So roundabout answer again. You're not getting anything too direct from me today, but I'm doing the best I can.
No. And I can only imagine the magnitude of being able to, and the graciousness to be a part of such a special moment for those athletes who have gone through a tremendous amount of sacrifice and work over many years. And it loops back to the point you made earlier about people usually in the Olympics, they look at who's first on the podium, or people sometimes only look at who is on the podium. And to think about all the hard work and sacrifice it takes for the athletes to have all gotten there to the Olympics, let alone the ones that finish on the podium, can sometimes be a bit sad in a way, because you don't want to discredit or take away the tremendous work that has been done by those athletes who may have had the opportunity to finish on the podium. Or if you think about someone in a 100-meter race, you're going up against Usain Bolt, like chances are you're just going to play second fiddle, or, you're going to be swept under the rug along with all the other runners that can't stand to the mighty skills of Usain Bolt. But at the same time, that shouldn't take away from the greatness that they have had to make it there. And I think that being able to be a part of it, especially in terms of bringing it to life, is such an important part of being a sportscaster and a part of telling stories, right? Like you said, being that little kid, like, I got to share this with someone, I want to tell someone like how amazing this is.
Yeah.
And so now in more recent years, you've had the opportunity to work with the Manitoba Moose. In this last year, you were working with the Winnipeg Ice. What was your what was your thinking in terms of the excitement to be back in the realm of hockey and to be keeping around your one of your favorite games, considering that you had jumped around a little bit from Fox to CBC to doing Olympics to working with the Moose and now the Ice?
Yeah, so it's interesting how life goes. There are things that sort of take place in the business that are beyond your control over the course of decades in any industry. And CBC losing the rights to Hockey Night in Canada to Rogers created financial pressures at CBC, which led to changes at CBC in terms of its staffing. There were a number of people who were laid off, and I was among that group of people who moved on in 2015. And things work in mysterious ways. That very summer was when True North elected to bring the St. John's Ice Caps back to Winnipeg and have the Manitoba Moose return in a 2.0 version of the American Hockey League franchise here in the city, one of the great American Hockey League franchises. And it was exciting to me because I had done play-by-play for a number of years previously, as we've discussed. And so I wanted to get back to that. I wanted to get back to that role. And actually it was a focus of mine to do play-by-play full-time again. Even before things had changed at CBC, I wanted to get into full-time play-by-play. And so I was really lucky that opportunity presented itself here in the city. Mark Chipman and everybody in the organization did a wonderful job to bring that team back and to get it up and running again in a short period of time. And I feel very grateful that Mr. Chipman selected me to be the voice of that team for the first 4 years. And can't say enough about it. It's a great league. It was a very well run and is a very well run franchise. To be associated with the coaches, the staff, the players was a real hoot. And it's just one of those things that you feel lucky to look back and say you're involved in something along those lines.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more, especially with being involved with local hockey here in Winnipeg on multiple levels, having done sideline reporting for Hockey Night in Canada and worked to the Moose and have worked to the Ice. And I guess the Blues is the only thing that's left now. But in terms of your experience with hockey, that you've been in a multitude of levels in many different places, your sideline reporting with Hockey Night in Canada, what many would consider one of the great staples of Canadian sports television. Mm-hmm. Who is, or who were, would you say would be the most interesting or the coolest people that you had the opportunity to interview, whether it would have been a player or people who, or a coach or whomever it would have been? Who is the one group of people, one person that sticks out to you in your mind with interviewing on the sideline with Hockey Night in Canada?
Well, from a Winnipeg point of view, I think one of the most special moments was interviewing Teemu Selanne when he came to town as a member of the Ducks to face the Jets for the first time. There was a huge buzz in the city about that. And that was pretty neat to be on the bench, the Ducks bench before the game, in the pregame warm-up, and having Teemu come over and say a few words, and the fans chanting his name and cheering for him every time he touched the puck subsequently in that game. That was pretty amazing. When I did Montreal Canadiens games, I was working at the Bell Center the night that Saku Koivu made his return to Montreal after an absence, and of course after dealing with some serious health issues as well. So that was pretty exciting to see that response in that building. There's a lot. I remember talking to Shane Doan after the Coyotes were eliminated from the playoffs in the spring of 2011, and having to ask Shane on the ice if that was the last game the Arizona Coyotes were going to play, because there was so much talk about them having troubles financially that maybe they wouldn't be able to continue there. And to have to ask somebody that after losing a playoff series is, really difficult to do. I was very lucky that I was talking to Shane Doan, because there aren't many classier or more gracious to be able to handle a question like that. So those are some of the moments that come to mind. But it's one of those things when you're doing something like Hockey Night in Canada, it doesn't matter who you're talking to. You do feel a privilege and a gratitude to even be in that role, to even have the chance to be part of that show, to share a Saturday night with people, and to watch those towels get handed out between periods. That's a lot of fun. I'm going to tell you a quick story mentioning the towels. So those towels are a pretty big deal. You can't get them anywhere. And so a lot of people value them. And I was doing a game, Montreal and New Jersey in New Jersey. And I talked to Zach Parise between periods. And before Zach came over, I had a guy, it was an assistant on the crew, who wasn't Canadian, was American, hired locally. And I said to him, now listen, you may not be familiar with this because of your background, but Hockey Night in Canada is like our Monday Night Football. And a lot of people watch, and it's one of the great traditions is these towels. So I'm going to give you, this towel, and I want you to put it around the shoulders of the player that I interview. But, understand that we don't just give these things out to everybody. These are just for the people that we interview. So be very careful, guard the towel, sort of thing. So the guy's, oh yeah, I got it, no problem. So Zach comes over, really nice guy. Assistant puts the towel around Zach's neck. We do the interview. Thanks very much, Zach. Take care. See you later. Zach turns to walk away, and the guy on the crew, gentleman that is working with me, reaches out and pulls the towel off of Zach as he's walking away because he thinks, I can't just give these towels away. They're so important. Zach turns around and looks at him. He says, hey, that's my towel. So here I am in between these two guys, and I'm trying to explain to the guy that's helping, no, it's okay to, the guy, it's done the interview. He can keep the towel, but we can't just give these towels to everyone. So now here I am giving Zach his towel back, after this interview at Hockey Night in Canada. And it was a good moment. And, Zach's a super pro. So, it turned into a laugh and a smile. But it was one of those things where, you don't foresee it coming. You're trying to sort of do things the right way and things happen fast. And all of a sudden there's this odd moment where this guy's picking this towel back. So all part of the fun.
And again, you're 100% right with having lots of fun and wanting to share in that tradition and the importance of what it means to be on Hockey Night in Canada, to be that person being interviewed, to receive that towel as well. It's such a quintessential part of the longstanding tradition in the television gig, and it sounds like that definitely could have been a scarier moment, but it turned out for the better and was a lot of fun in the end for you guys, and everyone had a good laugh. So that's
well, the lucky thing about hockey is that 99.9% of the people involved are great people and roll with the punches pretty well. So even you want to do everything right, and you want to do things to the letter of the law, but when things go sideways, there's usually a pretty understanding person on the other end of it who can roll with it.
Well, Mitch, we're just about out of time here. We're getting towards the end, so we're going to go to our final question round. And so you've had a lot of experience with working in sports, and you've worked with hockey and soccer. If there was one event that from when the time that you were a kid growing up playing sports to now in your career into the future of the years that you will be working in the industry, if there was one event that you could call and that you would have the desire to be a part of in terms of sideline reporting or play-by-play or whatever it may be, which event would it be and why?
Wow. It's funny. I've had this strange thing in my career where I've done a lot of team firsts. My very first job was with an expansion team in the Alberta Junior Hockey League. And then I was with the Moose when they first came back for the 2.0 era. And then I was with the Ice when they came to town and reestablished the Western Hockey League here in Winnipeg. So firsts are unique to me and special. One thing that's pretty cool is the Seattle Kraken being announced. That would be pretty neat to do the first game for an NHL team. Not a pretty small chance of that happening. Who knows? But I think the traditional thing to say, or sort of the stock thing to say, would be something like the 7th game of a Stanley Cup final. That would be pretty amazing. A World Cup final in soccer would be out of this world. It's just such a privilege to be able to do this kind of thing, that I get excited about a Tuesday night game in Brandon. So, you just kind of take it one step at a time and just try to appreciate whatever comes your way. But things like what I've mentioned certainly are there when when you dream the dream.
Absolutely. And I know that from a perspective of a person that's worked an array of sports and many different levels, that being in the process, being in the midst of the games that you're doing is what is really fun at the time, and what can be the best game that you're doing is the one that you're doing right now, or the one that you've done most recently, because we're not always granted opportunities. And obviously with what COVID-19 has showed us, that sport unites us, and that we are very grateful to have the opportunity to call sport, to be consumers of sport, to be participants of sport. And so it sounds like the opportunities that you've had have really been ones that you're grateful for, no matter the level, whether it be that Tuesday night in Brandon, or whether it be gold medals at the Olympics for Canadians on home soil. So it's great to hear that you're so passionate and avid sports fan, that it's really worked out well in terms of the opportunities that you've had and weaved for yourself over these many years in your career.
Yeah, you know what? You make a great point when you tie it in with what we're all experiencing here during the pandemic. It's easy to focus on what's not going right or what we don't have, but it can go a long way to creating a sort of a contentment in your life to recognize what you do have. So well said by you. I'll steal that from you.
Absolutely. Well, Mitch, thanks again so much for being on the show, and we appreciate the time you've taken today to grace us with your wisdom and stories and the great insight into the importance of the different levels of sport and different sports that we have the great opportunity to play here in Canada.
Oh, thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Well, thanks again so much for being on, and thank you everyone for listening, and thank you for huddling up.
Here we go. Tonight! Easy!
In the goal.
Kill! Lane!
Moves to the right, it goes directly to Clement. Clement reverses it.
Nick Foles!
It's a touchdown by Nick Foles!
Let's go! Woo!
Everything today.
Let's go, B-Dub.
Catch him and throw him.
Let's go.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Huddle Up. Make sure to follow on social media at Huddle Up Podcast on Instagram and on YouTube at Huddle Up with Matias Bueno. Let's make sure to execute this week, and I'll see you next time.